Welcome to Shatter.
Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. It happened at Applebee's on a Thursday night. Her co-workers were there, two men in tailored blazers, one of them their newest client, the investor she'd been talking about for weeks. I reached for her hand under the table, the way I always did. She looked at it, then at them, and pulled away. Smiling, she said lightly, "Let's not make it weird." It was a small thing, but in that moment, something inside me went completely silent. They laughed, kept talking about campaigns and numbers, about how branding is all about perception. I just sat there, hearing every word as if it was being spoken in another language. I realized they were right. Perception was everything. And in her world, I wasn't part of the picture anymore. I was the shadow behind her carefully lit life. When the check came, the investor insisted on paying. He waved the waiter off, saying, "Come on, it's just dinner." She smiled at him, the same way she used to smile at me. On the way home, she scrolled through her phone, laughing at something he'd texted. I drove in silence, the glow from her iPhone screen reflecting in the window like a wall between us. The next morning, she left early for a client meeting. I knew it would be at the Starbucks downtown. She always went there with him. I sat in the truck outside her office for a long time, watching people move with purpose, headphones in, coffee cups in hand. Everyone was on their way somewhere. Everyone except me. That night, she came home late, smelling like perfume and espresso, talking fast about big opportunities. I nodded, pretending to listen. Inside, I was already packing, not clothes or boxes, just thoughts, memories, things I'd stop responding to. The first step wasn't leaving. It was going quiet. I didn't argue, didn't confront. I just started deleting. Old photos, shared playlists, every message that once meant something. Her digital world ran on attention, mine would run on absence. When she asked if something was wrong, I said nothing. Because the truth was already loud enough. She refused to be seen beside me in public. Soon, she wouldn't see me at all. The first sign came from someone who didn't know me the truth. Jake, a guy from her office, texted me by mistake, or maybe not by mistake at all. "Man, you okay with her spending so much time with that investor?" That was all it said. No emojis, no tone, just a message that landed like a nail through silence. I didn't reply. I just stared at the screen until it went dark, until I saw my own reflection instead of his words. Later that night, she came home talking about a new project. The investor had personally requested her for it. Her voice was light, proud. She was glowing with that kind of success that feeds on validation. I knew the look. It wasn't about me anymore. It was about being chosen. I stood by the kitchen counter, nodding, watching her talk about meetings, lunches, proposals. Everything that used to sound like progress now just sounded like distance. The next day, I started noticing patterns. Her phone never left her hand. Her laugh was different when it came from across the room, softer, almost rehearsed. She wore new clothes, not expensive, but calculated, sharp lines, neutral colors. She was rebuilding her image, one outfit, one story at a time. At work, I lost myself in blueprints. Precision was my refuge. I designed things that didn't lie, structures that held, lines that met perfectly. That night, when I stopped for dinner, I didn't go home. I sat in my truck outside Best Buy, watching people come and go, their lives full of small purchases and quiet certainty. I walked inside, bought a new set of tools I didn't need. Maybe I just wanted to hold something real again, something built to last. When I got back, she was asleep on the couch, Hulu still playing the same show we used to watch together. I turned off the TV, looked at her, and realized I was no longer part of her story. I was the background she edited out to make space for the version of herself she wanted the world to see. That was the night I decided not to confront her. No shouting, no accusations. I would let her world spin, just without me in its orbit. I didn't go looking for proof. It found me. One morning, her laptop was open on the kitchen table, half buried under papers from work. I didn't mean to look, but a message popped up on the screen before I could turn away. His name. The investor. It wasn't romantic. No hearts, no promises. Just strategy. "We should sit together at the conference. Optics matter." And then her reply. "Of course. I'll make it look natural." That one line said more than any confession ever could. She wasn't being unfaithful in the usual way. It was worse. She'd sold the image of us for an upgrade, one where I didn't fit the design. She came downstairs while I was still standing there. I closed the laptop. She didn't notice. She grabbed her Starbucks cup, scrolled through her phone, kissed me on the cheek without looking. "Don't wait up," she said. I didn't. At work, I stared at blueprints I couldn't focus on. I thought about the precision I lived by, every line connected, every joint supporting the next. In her world, connection was just decoration. And I finally understood. I wasn't her partner. I was her prop. That evening, I drove nowhere in particular. Just streets, headlights, quiet. My phone buzzed once. It was her, asking if I could send a file she'd left at home. I sent it. Then I turned off notifications. For the first time, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt earned. When I came home, she was asleep again, the glow from her iPhone lighting the room. I looked at her and felt nothing sharp, just a flat, calm kind of clarity. Her life was a performance, and I was the one still standing behind the curtain, waiting for her to remember the script. That night, I backed up everything important, bank info, photos, work files. Then I started changing passwords, not out of anger, but precision, just systems being reset. She wouldn't notice it for a while, but soon, her world would start to flicker where mine used to be. I disappeared on a Tuesday. No announcement, no note, just a quiet deletion. My phone went first. I changed the number, then turned it off. The sound of it powering down felt final, like the end of a long argument I'd never agreed to have. I deleted my social accounts next, one by one, until my name stopped appearing in her tagged photos, her posts, her stories. By the time she noticed, I was already gone. She called that night, of course. Then again. The calls didn't go through. Her messages showed only one gray check mark. Silence became the only reply. I imagined her confusion turning to panic. Not because she missed me, but because she couldn't explain me. Her world revolved around visibility, and I'd just turned invisible. I drove for hours with no real direction, the truck humming under me, the night wide and empty. I stopped at a rest area just off the highway, bought a coffee from a vending machine that tasted like metal, and sat there watching taillights streak by. It felt strange, realizing how peaceful absence could be. In the days that followed, I started over in small ways. Rented a tiny apartment near the edge of town. Paid cash for everything. Set up a new email, new number, new silence. At Best Buy, I picked up a new laptop. Nothing fancy, just practical. I spent that night building a clean slate. No history, no bookmarks, no trace of the man she'd known. Back in her world, I could imagine the questions starting. Friends asking where I'd gone. Colleagues wondering why my number didn't work. She'd have to come up with something. Maybe I was busy, traveling, needing space. She'd find a version that sounded good enough to post. But deep down, I knew what she'd really feel wasn't guilt. It was exposure. Because for someone who lived through screens, the worst punishment wasn't being forgotten. It was realizing the person who once stood beside her had vanished without leaving a reflection. Disappearing wasn't the end. It was the setup. A clean slate gave me space to see what I'd missed while I was still trying to fix what was already broken. The investor, her client, wasn't just funding campaigns. He was funding silence. Money moved through side accounts, project budgets that didn't exist a week before. I didn't hack or spy. I just knew where to look. Her company's public reports were full of holes big enough for truth to slip through. I found one document that connected everything. A proposal signed by her team, but paid through one of his shell companies. It was the kind of thing that could sink both of them if the right people saw it. I didn't send it anywhere. I didn't need to. I just left a trail where it could be found. An internal audit folder, a forwarded copy with no sender. Systems handle justice better than people do. By the end of that week, his name started fading from the company's website. Her department went quiet online, like someone had pulled the plug. She must have felt it. That sudden vacuum where power used to be. I stayed invisible, just watching the ripples spread from a distance. She posted less after that. The client dinners stopped showing up on her feed. The glow that used to surround her was gone. I knew she'd feel it soon. That shift from admired to avoided. People in her world always sense when the spotlight turns away. Meanwhile, I worked. Simple, steady work. Design, calculation, progress without performance. It grounded me, like muscle memory. I didn't check her profiles anymore, But sometimes her name appeared in the background, someone tagging her, mentioning her, asking quiet questions. What happened? The irony was almost poetic. She'd spent years mastering visibility, and now the same eyes that once praised her were looking for explanations she couldn't control. I didn't ruin her. I just stopped covering her reflection. And in that empty space, her image started to collapse all by itself. The first time I saw her again, it wasn't planned. I was at a friend's birthday dinner. A quiet thing, nothing polished, just good food and people who didn't care about appearances. She walked in late, clearly not expecting to see me. The room shifted when she noticed me. It wasn't loud or dramatic, just that subtle silence people make when they sense history in the air. She tried to act casual, greeting everyone, keeping her distance. But I saw it. The hesitation, the quick glances, the forced smile. It wasn't guilt. It was fear of what others might think. Her friends used to look at her like she was the one with the answers, the one with connections. Now they looked at her differently, waiting for her to explain why I was there, why I wasn't supposed to be. Someone asked, half joking, "Hey, weren't you too?" She cut him off with a laugh that landed wrong. "We're fine. Just taking time." That was her word for erasing people. Time. I didn't say anything. I just smiled, finished my drink, and left before dessert. On the way out, I caught her watching me. That was the moment it hit her. She wasn't in control of the story anymore. The next day, mutual friends started reaching out. Not to gossip, just to ask if I was okay. I told them I was. They didn't believe how calm I sounded. One of them said, "She really thought no one would notice." That line stuck with me, because in her world, perception was power. And now perception was turning against her. A week later, I heard she'd been removed from a major project. The investor had quietly disappeared from the company roster. Her team was restructuring. She didn't post anything for days. No new outfits, no coffee meetings, no quotes about success. Just silence. I didn't celebrate it. I didn't need to. The truth had done what I never could. It made her visible for who she really was. And the cruelest part was, she had built that mirror herself. Months passed before I heard from her directly. By then, I'd built a rhythm again. Work, gym, weekends at the lake, dinners that didn't revolve around small talk or image. My life had shrunk, but it finally felt solid. I'd stopped checking her name online, stopped caring about who was watching who. Silence had turned from an act of revenge into something cleaner, a kind of freedom. Then, one evening, a message appeared from an unknown number. I knew it was her before I even opened it. The words were short. "Can we talk?" I didn't reply. The next day, another message. "I just want to understand what happened." I stared at that one longer. "What happened?" She did. And then she performed. A week later, I saw her again, by accident, or maybe not. She was at the same Starbucks where she used to meet him, sitting alone, no makeup, phone face down on the table. She didn't see me, and I didn't approach. For a moment, I almost felt something close to pity. The woman who once measured her worth by attention now looked like someone hiding from it. That night, I thought about the way she used to walk into a room, confident, deliberate, like the light followed her. Now, she was learning how it felt when it didn't. Her friends had moved on, her company had replaced her face with someone new, and her silence online had become louder than anything she'd ever posted. I never blocked her new number, but I didn't answer either. Letting her speak into the void felt right. She needed to feel what I had felt for months, talking to someone who no longer existed in her world. The last message she sent said, "You just disappeared. Like you erased us." She was close. I hadn't erased us. I'd erased the version she performed. What was left was real, and real things survive without being seen. It was early fall when she finally showed up at my place. I'd moved to a smaller apartment by then. Bare walls, clean desk, everything practical. I was sitting by the window, finishing a design draft, when I saw her car pull in. She sat there for a long time before getting out, like she was rehearsing what to say. When she finally knocked, it wasn't the confident rhythm I used to know. It was hesitant, uneven. I opened the door. For a moment, neither of us spoke. She looked smaller somehow, like the world had folded in on her. "You look different," she said quietly. I just nodded. She tried to smile, but couldn't hold it. I needed to see you." Her voice cracked on the last word. I stepped aside and let her in, not out of kindness, but because I wanted her to feel what silence really sounded like when it wasn't for show. She looked around the room. No photos, no traces of the life we'd shared. Just blueprints, tools, a coffee mug from Best Buy with a chipped edge. She noticed the simplicity and frowned, as if it offended her that I'd moved on without leaving space for her. "You really deleted everything," she said. I didn't answer. She started talking fast then, like she used to when she was nervous, about her job, how things had fallen apart, how people had turned away when the investor disappeared. Every word was an excuse wrapped in regret. I let her talk until her voice wore itself out. When she finally stopped, the silence between us felt heavy. I could see it hit her. How far she'd fallen from the version of herself she once tried to sell. I didn't gloat. I didn't remind her of that night at Applebee's. I just said, "You built everything on being seen. Now you're learning what happens when people stop looking." She nodded slowly, tears she didn't want to show slipping down anyway. For the first time, she didn't try to control the narrative. And for the first time, I didn't need to say anything more. After that night, she kept trying to find reasons to reach out. A text about something she'd forgotten, an email about closure, a voice message where she said she just wanted to talk, but I knew what she really wanted. She wanted to know if she still existed in my world. That was her addiction all along, being seen, being validated. But I'd already learned how to live without her reflection. Her messages stayed unread. Eventually, she stopped sending them. And in their place came stories from others. How she'd been passed over for a promotion, how she barely spoke at meetings anymore. One of her friends ran into me at a hardware store and said quietly, "She's not the same." I just smiled. She was finally becoming real. I'd see her sometimes around town, at places where we used to go, walking fast, keeping her head down, no phone in hand, no audience. The woman who once performed for every pair of eyes now moved like she wanted to disappear. It wasn't revenge, it was balance. The world had caught up with her, and I didn't need to lift a finger. One night, while cleaning up my workbench, I found her old notebook wedged between two boxes. Inside were sketches she used to make, small plans for campaigns, ideas about color and light. There was one page where she'd written something that stopped me cold. "Visibility is survival." It wasn't a note. It was her truth. That's why my silence broke her. It wasn't punishment. It was erasure from the one language she spoke. I closed the notebook and put it in a drawer. It didn't make me angry anymore. It just reminded me how fragile a life built on attention really is. While she was fading out, I'd been building something steady, something quiet. Projects, new clients, a small group of people who knew me for what I did, not how I looked doing it. For the first time in years, my world made sense without her in it. And for the first time, hers didn't make sense without me. Winter came quietly that year. The world outside slowed down, and so did I. The silence that once felt like an escape now felt like peace. I'd stopped thinking about her every day, stopped checking shadows for pieces of the past. But life has a way of circling back when you least expect it. It was a cold Sunday morning when I saw her again. I'd stopped at a small diner for breakfast, the kind of place where no one cares who you are. She was sitting alone by the window, a half-empty cup of coffee in front of her. No phone, no makeup, just a woman looking out at nothing. For a moment, I almost walked out. But she turned her head, and our eyes met. She didn't rush to speak. She just looked at me with a kind of raw honesty I hadn't seen before. Then, softly, she said, "You were right. I built everything around being seen. And when you disappeared, I didn't know who I was anymore." Her voice trembled, not from drama, but from truth. I nodded. "That's the thing about reflections," I said. "They vanish when the light changes." She didn't try to argue, didn't beg. She just looked down, then whispered, "I'm sorry." And I believed her, not because I needed to, but because I could tell she finally understood. For a long time, we sat there in silence. The kind that isn't cold, just final. When I got up to leave, she didn't stop me. She just said quietly, "You really did disappear." I paused at the door and looked back at her one last time. "I didn't disappear," I said. "I just stopped showing up where I wasn't respected." Outside, the wind was sharp, the morning bright. I got into my truck and drove away, not angry, not sad, just done. Behind me, she stayed at that window, small against the light, learning the hardest truth of all. Some people don't leave to punish you. They leave to protect what's left of themselves. And once they do, they never come back. Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories.